Santa Clarita.
Cool.
So nice to see you all, and we're so excited to get started. So let's get into it. Today's panel and workshop is brought to you by the amazing team at UC San Diego Extended Studies, who's going to discuss digital marketing essentials. So this is an important topic if you're a marketer yourself or you're looking to learn marketing for your business. On the next slide, we're going to be reviewing our agenda. So here's our agenda for today. We're reviewing digital marketing essentials, and we're going to talk a little bit about LatinaGeeks mission and vision. You're going to meet the team behind LatinaGeeks San Diego, and then we'll have an intro from our sponsor. Then we'll have a Q&A at the end, so be sure to hold any questions till the end. Okay. So here is a little bit about our mission. So first off, for those of you who may be joining us for their first LatinaGeeks event ever, welcome to La Familia. This is your community that you'll now be a part of. LatinaGeeks' mission is to empower and inspire and educate Latinas by sharing technical knowledge, business skills, and entrepreneurship resources through hands-on workshops like this one, strategic partnerships like our partnership with UC San Diego, and community events. LatinaGeeks is a 501c3 nonprofit organization with chapters across the Western United States, and our chapters are led by volunteers who are the heart and soul of the organization. Their contributions and leadership are critical to fulfilling our mission. I'd also like to add there that we're always looking for more volunteers who want to be involved. We're a rock star team of people who just love to give back and inspire folks like ourselves. So please reach out if you're interested in volunteering with us. I also want to announce before we get started here that we do have an opportunity for you to win something very special after the workshop. We just ask that you stay engaged, ask questions, and chime in during the conversation today. We're going to be providing details towards the end of the workshop today. So here's a little bit about our story. The founders, Lala Castro and Tanya Salcido, actually launched LatinaGeeks as a tech research blog back in 2012. From there, Lala and Tanya launched Google Hangouts, tech reviews, and partnered with Sony for a live CES broadcast. Those experiences launched us to our first hands-on coding workshop. We had no idea what was going to happen, and we sold out in 2 hours, which told us very clearly that there's a need for an organization like ours. We're so honored to be part of this change. And then in 2018, we filed as a nonprofit and opened chapters across the West Coast. So around 2020 to 2021, and through this year, we revamped and went virtual with workshops like this one to bring you more content. We also brought on more volunteers, and now we're looking ahead at a jam-packed year for workshops for next year. So if you like this one, stay tuned on our social media, Instagram or LinkedIn for upcoming events. We'd love to see you back. We'll also be taking your feedback in the form of a survey at the end of the discussion today. So please let us know what you'd like to see in the next session. All right, so here's the San Diego chapter who's leading the workshop today. We have the incredible Gabby Baker, president of the chapter, who's here as well. Hey, Gabby.
Hi, welcome everybody. Glad you're here.
Thank you. And then myself as VP. We also have our newest treasurer, Natalia Moreno. She's here to join us as well. So huge kudos to these ladies who are in the chat as well. So feel free to stay hi and interact with them. We're actually also looking for a secretary at the moment. So if you'd like to get more insight on how to volunteer with us, what that all means, and maybe look for ways to get involved, reach out to me. There's my email down below. I'm happy to talk to you about this opportunity. All right, so now that you know what LatinaGeeks is all about, we hope you're pumped up and excited for the workshop this evening, sponsored by the incredible UC San Diego Extended Studies. Jennifer Neely joins us today. She's going to talk with us about making your mark in the digital marketing landscape. So Jennifer, thank you for joining us this evening, and I will turn it over to you.
It's my absolute honor, and I hope that plenty of you are here to not only get some skills, but to support the organization. Please go check out membership on the site after this event. It's a great organization. I cannot tell you how meaningful I was able to host or teach at a prior event prior to the pandemic. And it was one of the most meaningful experiences of my career, which is saying a lot. But in any event, I want to share this little presentation that I've put together for all of you on the foundations of digital marketing. And I know that there's a lot of people with different skill sets here. So I always like to start by defining terms. So marketing is a discipline, right? It's something that's studied at lots of different levels. But now today, people are practically doing it since birth. That's just the nature of the way we're all kind of hustling these days. So I always like to think about and kind of separate out marketing as an academic discipline and think about where it's at the intersection. It's at the intersection of psychology, sociology, and anthropology, right? So if you have an interest in those areas or studied in them at any level, you kind of have a leg up. You also can think about it as, if it's really funny when you do marketing long enough, you'll find that even watching things on National Geographic can actually be really insightful because they'll talk about behaviors that have been true since the beginning of time for human beings, as well as animals and animal kingdom. And they can be true of us and the way we behave online. And we've learned a lot about how we behave online. And so when we talk about digital marketing, there's so many terms that are thrown around, and there are no stupid questions ever, at least not in things I teach. So if you have any questions, pop them in the chat throughout this. And, maybe I'll get to the question, maybe we'll need to circle back to it, but please feel empowered to change your name in the Zoom if you need to feel anonymous and ask the question. We won't read your name out anyway. And the main thing is that we're all sharing. And I also love to be stumped. So if you have a good use case of something you're working on, please feel free to share it. So let's make sure we're using the same terms to talk about the same thing. Digital marketing, what is it? It's an umbrella term for all online marketing efforts. Note the word effort. I'll get to that, the terminology around it in a minute, for businesses and organizations. And I always point this out because this comes up every term. In my digital marketing course, I have students work on a course project, their final throughout the term. And they can, we go through the selection process of what they might like to do. And a lot of people don't just want to work, some want to work for themselves. Of course, there's been a huge, I actually worked at Fiverr when they were really growing, when they got their Series B funding. So I'm really well aware of the gig economy and the research around that and how much that's exploded, particularly since November of last year. So you've got the gig economy folks out there. You've got people in more traditional jobs that might want to make a difference and kind of take their own initiative, right? But there's also people that are increasingly, whether it's with a business that is driven by a purpose, cause, mission, or vision, or it's a full-on nonprofit organization. It can be a B Corp, it can be a lot of different things. But people these days are really looking to make a meaningful difference in the world more than ever. And I really want to honor that. So I honor that in my own way by saying businesses and organizations. Most principles that we'll look at here are applicable. There's nothing that I've presented here that wouldn't work with some slight variation possibly for a nonprofit organization. You should still be thinking about the same foundational elements. So think about that too. Just because you work for a nonprofit or an organization that wants to do good in the world, either one, those still fit into people that are looking at prospective customers, audiences, whatever you want to call it. You just adapt it or change the word slightly. So it's a huge spectrum of tactics to consider. And the best digital marketers really have a clear idea of, a clear picture of how each asset supports their overall goals. So that can be website, that can be Instagram, that can be a combination of social and their website. And, it can be a lot of different things. And it can certainly include, coding teams and program management, product management, all of the different pieces that make up an organization. Ideally, if you have a good mission and vision, you can all kind of align under that goal and complement each other. But this is the digital marketing piece. There's a cause and effect in terms of digital marketing, and kind of what I think of when I think of the foundations. And when I was looking at this presentation, the things I think about, some of them you can kind of bucket, and people will bucket in different ways or group. But there's sort of content marketing efforts, right? So anything that has to do with the written word, or it can be video or audio too. So it's really anything we communicate. So think about content that way. You want to be lateral in your thinking and more expansive in your thinking about what your marketing can be. That's really helpful too, in terms of repurposing, and also for thinking about folks that have various kinds of, there's not a great word for this, but people that are protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act. We're seeing more people being responsive to that. And I see Nicole raised her hand. Do we want to take questions as we go, or should we wait till the end?
We can take questions as we go. Yep, no problem.
Nicole, do you have something pertinent to this right now? Let's see. I don't see a question in the chat.
Susie just asked like who in here is in marketing, works in marketing. So people are responding to
Got
that.
it. Sorry, I missed that question. So I'll go back to my my content discussion. So think about content laterally. So if you love video, don't forget about audio. If you love video, but you've never listened to it with audio on, or opposite, always think about captions, et cetera. And that will also help you with those that are in the Americans with Disabilities Act category. And often, like the trend for captions to be burned into videos helps make it more accessible, content more accessible to more people. So it's all a good thing. Social media marketing, I typically think of as a subset of content marketing, because you really want to have kind of a macro, an umbrella of topics and themes that you're working through in some sort of organized way, usually through a content calendar. But social media is so important. It is its own thing. So I've broken that out. Another foundation is search. So search engine optimization, but really it's anything related to the keywords on your main presences. There's mobile marketing, which is email marketing, text marketing, and app marketing. And there's a lot of variation in what's available there, and some amazing statistics about how little text marketing is still used these days, especially in comparison to other countries. Then we've got paid marketing. So anything where you have to pay to get it. So whether it's, a search engine rank, or pay to be seen more, or it's a small ad you do on Instagram, that's a paid marketing effort. And then of course, analytics and measurement, because you're nothing if you don't know how you're performing, right? That you can go bankrupt, and we don't want that to happen. But that's what can happen if we don't look at the reality of the foundations, if we don't mind all of these elements and don't have a keen eye on them, don't understand them at a very basic level, we really can lose our way. So how do we implement the pieces that make up content marketing? Well, it's really about these 4 words, and you'll hear them thrown around interchangeably. And I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail here, but there's strategy, which is kind of the high level macro. So you should be thinking about kind of all of the intended and unintended effects that a marketing effort can have, right? And that marketing effort, the reason I use effort is it's kind of a agnostic word. It doesn't really mean a specific strategy, plan, or campaign, but plan and campaign are used interchangeably all the time. So usually a plan is something for a specific period of time that's taken over a longer term. A campaign is a more specific and shorter term mission to accomplish something. Like you might do a campaign, and that campaign has specific tactics, like a series of webinars. And then, you might have after effects from that. And then the tactics are the actual implementation of the individual social posts. the elements, the platform you're using for the webinar. So the fact that we're on Zoom right now, that's the tactical implementation piece. And frankly, that is the piece that my students come back to me when I'm in communication with them years and years later. But especially right after they leave our certificate, they get a lot of interviews and they do great. The issue can sometimes be that tactical implementation. So I'm always trying to really talk with my students about that, opportunities to get their hands on and try out platforms, publishing platforms, various social platforms, especially if you don't love being on social media. Creating an account that's, even using Reddit for those purposes, or Discord, or whatever your favorite platform is and you're anonymous on, can be really important in terms of learning how to implement and being able to transfer that skill. So I can't see the title, so let me just move the thing. So what do you want? I think this is such an important question, because these days we're all so time pressed, and I don't know if you've ever done this, but you get an email and the email wants you to do something, and it wants you to do something, but you don't know what they want. You can't figure out what they're asking you to do. And that's not a good sign when somebody's trying to get your business, right? So think about it. And this actually happens a lot in my, being on nonprofit boards. They want me to share something on social, but they go into this like long, protracted, thank you so much, da 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 da. It's like, I'm in a hurry. Tell me what you need. You want me to retweet something? Great. Where's the link? You know what I mean? So I think you want to have those things, those calls to action, CTAs, calls to action. You make them very clear, and you want to be thinking about what you want various contingents of people online to do. Anyone online is your potential audience. So where are they? What do they do, etc. So here's some questions to think about that might help you formulate an idea. So do you want to reach people who've never bought from you before and bring them into your buyer's journey? Now, buyer's journey is a phrase that you will hear a lot, and I don't want to go into it a huge amount, except to say it's the process buyers go through to become aware of a product and then go all the way down to purchase. So people map this out. It's an entire kind of almost sub-discipline to really understand the buyer's journey. In healthcare, where I work a lot, you can imagine it can be a buyer's journey for someone who's, say, pursuing IVF treatment, can be very complicated, right? So everything really is a buyer's journey, even if it's a service, even if it's another business is buying from you, even if it's a nonprofit. If you want people to donate money, make it clear that you want them to donate money. And then, the why of it all can be kind of, just structure it so it's very clear and very succinct. The other groups you'll want to be thinking about is, do people not know about you? Just more awareness. Now, caveat on awareness, the majority of my students, the vast majority, will say awareness is the thing that they, are looking for. And I'm always cautious about that, because I have never, ever. Now, I came up in the ranks with the old school crowd when digital marketing was a brand new thing, and we never got funding for awareness. We'd have people mock us and say, oh, great, you want to do awareness. Well, how much is that going to cost me? And they didn't believe in digital marketing. Now it's the norm. But I still think it's actually helpful to think about those voices in my head from the past that go, well, wait, awareness is probably the most expensive thing you can try to go out there and earn. And that's why people work with influencers a lot, and people that can kind of help you earn the trust to be considered in the first place. And there's algorithms at play. There's so many factors to consider. But for right now, you want to be thinking about, you want to be known, but just know that's going to be more than likely the most expensive thing to do, either with your time, energy, or effort, and or with your actual dollars, like advertising and all of the other things that you need to do to make that happen. And then there's the group of people who've already bought from you. Those are really the people you want to continue to prospect and have maybe new lines of product, and you see it on Shark Tank all the time. If you've ever watched that show, you'll see people talk about, how creating additional revenue streams. And that's the whole reason of the rise of the subscription model, right? Is to have a way people can keep buying from you. So if there's someone here that I have bought hair flowers from, which is not a very elegant way of saying that, but anyway, she makes the most beautiful designs for wearing flowers in your hair. She could be thinking about, and I saw that she's on Insta, she's got sort of, purses and things made, but I know that's by another artisan in her area. So one thought would be, could she, if she wants to continue to sell to people she's already bought, that have already bought from her, is she making sure when she works with people and doing collabs that she's getting email addresses, that she's getting mobile numbers, that she's getting all of the information? Because often when we do those collaborations, we don't always get the information from the consumer, so we can't remarket to them. We can't say, hey, we've got Black Friday, Cyber Monday coming. I want you to buy from me. Here's what we've got on offer. Or here, it's Halloween coming up. This is a time where I probably, actually thinking about it, would have bought certain color flowers that I wouldn't normally wear. Like I'd wear black, for Halloween potentially. So things like that are really good examples where you might lose the buyer's information and you can't get it back. So thinking about what you want from your business, your organization, is really important, and what you want the consumer to do, so it's very clear to them. So 5 steps for setting your strategy. So this will kind of be the framework we think about throughout the rest of the presentation. So you want to be setting measurable goals. You want to know your audience and be thinking about these other audiences. You want to know your brand, and you want to watch the competition. You want to learn from the competition, really. And if you don't have competitors, you want to be thinking of comparative companies. And I'll get into that in that section, but that's really important to think about. The other way to think about it is, if you really have no competition, say you have a disruptive service that's like brand new and going to change the landscape, think about companies where you want to aspire to be like them. Executives do this all the time. They want to be like Elon Musk. Well, no one's going to be Elon Musk, because I've actually worked with him. He has a specific, and he's disclosed, he has a specific set of personality traits, some of which are considered disorders, that make him think and act in particular ways that no one can emulate. Yet I'm hired by someone right now to emulate his social presence. Well, how do I do that? So you're kind of reverse engineering someone that they aspire to be like, but maybe in a completely different industry, if that makes sense. So think about that for yourself. Like, who do you admire? Who could you take on board? It may not be a self-help guru, but it might, the way they market their book, the way that they promote others, the way they lift each other up, that all of those things are possible. And then be ready to measure. You want to make sure if you can't measure, there's the whole marketing isn't even worth doing. So let's talk about measuring your goals. So I wanted to throw out a few really practical examples. So for brand awareness, really nail it down. X number of leads from a piece of downloaded content in 1 month. Okay. So that's, applicable for lots of different business types. So if that's not useful, it could be a video, it can be a demo, it can be a guide, a how-to guide. So using the hair example, how to clip things in your hair a particular way. And then you can build on that to do different hair types. So you could even collab with someone who has African hair, somebody who has really thick South Asian hair, somebody who's got thinning hair, so that they might be able to create looks that are appropriate for their hair type, or the hair type they most identify with. And you can just keep building on. You can even use it to solicit people to collaborate with. Another example might be acquisition or lead generation. So that would be the percentage of old customers buying secondary products within the year. So it can be, you can define it as a secondary product, like a totally different product that you're starting to offer. So maybe a new offering, or it could be just another purchase of the same type of product you've been doing, but maybe you should have some differentiation with that second purchase, like maybe you have a deluxe version of something. So some place for people to aspire to go with your product line. And then growth from existing customers. So again, that would be people just making a simple a simple decision to follow you on social media and the percentage of follower growth. So that's really important. And I think people don't include their social handles high enough in most of their materials, and they don't know where to find them. And TikTok's a really good example, because even I, as early as I joined TikTok, couldn't get my own name, which is normally my handle everywhere else. So I'd use my nickname. Not everybody knows it. So in any event, that's one of the things to be thinking about. So let's bring this into the real world. I always like to use real world examples. So I've created Misha. Misha is a photographer, and recently she started producing videos for clients. So she wants to let all of her regular customers know that she now offers this extra service, so that some become both video and photography customers. And I'm guessing that the video customers probably, she probably earns more money, so she can spend more time with one person, in one setting, and earn more. So, it's not it sounds like a smart thing to do, right? But what would her strategy be? What would her goal be? So let's put that into real terms. Misha's strategy would be something like, I want to make sure 100% of my current customers know that I now offer video services as well as photography. I'll run email and social promotions to share this message for 2 months. After 3 months from the start of the promotion, I want to have at least one video commission from my 15% of current customers. So you see how specific it is? She's not counting anybody that happens to come in on a referral. She's not counting, there's a lot of aspects of her current base. She's not, or her, others that might become aware of her through the marketing she's going to inevitably do to generate the video business. But ultimately, she's very specific on time, and she's specific on numbers. She's specific on time frame and what tactics she's going to use, in this case, email and social media. So if you can think about that in terms of your own business, start thinking about those examples. And if you're having a hard time, that might be a good place to ask a question, and you can throw it in the chat. So we're going to go on to item 2 in your strategy, knowing your audience. So think about who your customers are and group them. So this is where marketing professionals can make tons of money in persona creation. If you've never heard that word before, it's PERSONA, personas. And they're amazing people that create amazing personas. I've had the chance to work with companies like Starbucks, where their belief when I worked with them was that we worked on personas together and we had done enough research, and their belief was that I should be able to pass that persona on the street and be able to see in their face that they were X type of customer. That's how specific they are. These days, honestly, it does not need to be that specific. I mean, they're $1 billion corporation. So yeah, they're going to have some sophistication. They have a lot of data at their disposal. And it's also worth thinking about Facebook, Meta in general, Facebook, Insta, and the whole metaverse. There's a ton of information they have about us. So in a way, I'll get to that if we have time and it relates to Q&A, but there's a whole piece to be said for thinking about where you want to capture your audience. Do you want it on your own website where you can control it? It's your domain. Or do you want it to be on Instagram, which could go down for several hours, a day, 2 days? It could go away entirely and you've lost your business. Having a happy medium, I think, is always what you want to strive for, but really think about that. And I think that's one of the toughest things for influencers in particular to balance, right? Because you're living or dying by your numbers on social, but at the same time, owning your own presence is really important. So I always tell influencers, look at the way some older influencers who don't think of themselves as influencers, like Ariana Huffington, Maria Shriver, a lot of older white women have created these newsletters using really Oprah's model and finding ways to capture audience that way. But in any event, this is in terms of know your audience and persona making. I kind of went on a tangent. I do that. Sorry. We're really talking about who are your customers and how do we think about them? So think about your customers. Think about who they are. If you don't have that information, this is a good time to ask them. Do a customer survey. People like to, if you pick the right times of day, like late on a Thursday, a Friday mid-morning, sometime when people might have a little downtime from work and check their email, or you should have data at some point, at some stage in your company that tells you when people open your emails and texts the most. Send them a little survey and give them an open box always to just vent to you, because you really don't want that to end up on your Google business profile, and you don't want it to end up on Yelp, and you don't want it to end up on tons of review sites out there. You want to have a release valve for people who are unhappy to come to you, and not just, well, my email's on my website or there's a contact form there. You want to in the same way, you are missing an opportunity to ask them what they want. And then that helps you learn who your customers are, and you can group them into 3 or 4 buckets. And then you take those and you create a character of them. Back in the day when I started my career in TV news, I wanted to know why I could go out in the field to report something and my hair could just be a mess. They really didn't care. I could just throw it up in a messy bun. But the station across town, everybody wore their hair all prim and proper, and they looked beautiful, and their clothes were very expensive. And I'm in my after college best. I'm thinking, what the heck's going on? And they told me that our target audience was a mix between Angela Lansbury, may she rest in peace, she just died recently, but it was Angela Lansbury back when she was on Murder, She Wrote, Roseanne Barr back when she was on Roseanne, and there was someone else, I think it was someone, from the show Touched by an Angel, Roma Downey, I think she was the other person. So a spiritual component. So we didn't need to look fancy. In fact, our viewers wouldn't relate to me if I looked fancy, right? So again, that's kind of where the idea for the character comes from. If you're targeting the way you speak and the tone of your communication to be for, Prince Charles, and your target customer is Homer Simpson, there's clearly going to be a disconnect, right? It's going to feel maybe that you're talking down to someone, and that's one of the worst outcomes you could have. So really, that is why you want to kind of create that character. And again, it's that idea from, that I was mentioning from Starbucks, where we could almost pass the person on the street holding the cup of Starbucks, or at least the cup, and know that they were X kind of customer. It's really helpful actually for organizations, especially as they grow, to give them a name, a photo, a personality. Like I mentioned, Homer Simpson, a lot of times cartoons can be fun. If there's a particular kind of anime that all of you like a particular series, you can use something from that. But sometimes characters from The Office, which are, hugely exaggerated people, but are definitely archetypes of people that we recognize from sort of in-office settings. Those are all really great ways to identify those target customers and what their joys might be and their pain points, things you can solve for them. So the biggest tip that I would give you, though, is to make sure you rank them, because Homer Simpson cannot afford the same amount that Prince Charles can, right? But the other thing is, the wealthiest customers usually expect stuff for free. So is Prince Charles really the biggest selling customer? It's probably going to be more like middle American, upper middle. They're the ones that are willing to spend the cash, because the upper echelons of our society often get things for free. And that is a reality that as Latina women, we probably know way too well. Right. We're only just now starting to get something like equal pay, things like that. So anyway, rank them and think about importance in terms of dollar value. If you're a nonprofit, that again, it could be they work within an organization where you can have a partnership with their whole company as opposed to just that person. So think laterally in terms of whatever is applicable to you. So we've got another example. Misha will always be called on for weddings. That's her bread and butter. We know photographers are needed for that setting generally. And while she's frequently dealing with anyone from the groom to the bride's sister on the actual day of the wedding, it's usually the bride to be that's driving and knows what she wants, what she wants to look like, and is going to make the decisions. That's Misha's experience of her customer base. That may not be true of everyone, but that is true of Misha. So Misha's first buyer persona is a nervous bride. That's who she's focused on. And that's frankly who she's going to prioritize first, because she's thinking, how can I package services and get more? Well, maybe she's going to suggest taking video of the wedding as well. And again, the nervous bride versus the groom versus the matron of honor, maid of honor, that's the most important thing in this particular scenario. So the third element of my strategy in a box is your brand. So you may not even think about yourself as a brand yet, especially if you're in the gig economy, but you are. Really, everyone is, because we all have digital identities. So, it's, why should I choose you over someone else? Why should I like you over someone else? And I think there's some bias here in terms of people who identify more as femme and people that identify more as masculine, right? So it doesn't have to be gendered necessarily or sex-based, but we know the statistics around mental health, and I always like to bring that up because people that are on more of the femme side often post on social media and they wait for positive responses. And so much of social can be negative responses. So, and then if you have a very masculine, sort of inner workings, you can kind of ignore people's feedback to almost to your detriment. I know, I can think of somebody that I've worked with before who was a podcast host and just is even acknowledging now that he will never say he's wrong. And it's getting to his listeners because he's not listening to them, yet he's relying on Patreon. He's relying on a model that's completely contingent on them listening and being engaged in his content. And yet he's not listening when they're saying, hey, this is working for me, this isn't, this format changes is difficult, or whatever it might be. So again, that speaks to that need for a release valve for people to let you know, or don't complain when they let you know honestly they're sharing with you, because what's happened is this person now is saying, should I hire you to help me with all these little groups that have formed now that are outside of his control? They're not his groups on Facebook anymore. They're other groups, they're alternative groups, because people need a good place to go when they want to discuss something. And the nature of this particular podcast, if you're in my influencer marketing class, you'll find out which person I'm talking about. But in any event, why should people choose you over the competition? You want to be listening for why that is. You want to be looking for why that is. And you should have a clear idea of why that is. And this is kind of a framework that I think of as just very basic and hopefully simple for how you can think of yourself, your company, your organization. Step one, ask yourself, what are your strongest character traits? And you can kind of look those up. You can just sort of look up and you'll find these in, again, sociology, psychology, there's in anthropology, there's great tools, particularly in sociology, available online that are great at helping you just go, well, what are character traits? And you can kind of look at a list and see what you identify with. So who's your customer? What problem do you solve in their lives? And what are your distinctive benefits, or what we call USP, which is unique selling point? Those are the things you want to be thinking about and asking yourself, asking if you have people that you work with, get their input. And eventually you'll want to be soliciting feedback at some stage with your customer base. And then you want to refine based on what you find out. You want to think about, how does that all fit together and paint a picture of my brand? And what does it reflect back to me? What is it saying about my brand? Sometimes when we do this brand reflection, for example, if you figure out that your target audience is, say, Marge Simpson, and you had thought that it was, I'm trying to think of another, sort of archetype, I watch Bake Off all the time. So I watch a lot of baking shows, so the Great British Bake Off, the Great British Baking Show. So if you watch that, and you think about sort of, if Noel Fielding ends up being your target customer, or if I use, better to use somebody from The Office. So let's say you're going for Marge Simpson, and you find out that, or you're going for someone like Jan on The Office, and you're actually getting Marge Simpson, who makes a lot less money. She's very down to earth. She's a lovely person, but she's probably not got the spending power of Jan in her heyday on The Office. You know what I mean? There's going to be a disparity. So people, again, you're looking at incomes. They might really tell you a lot. And there's so much you can learn about people by just taking their email address and searching it on the web. It's incredible. MailChimp actually used to do a lot of that for you, and some of those services have actually been disabled, but there's lots of tools to explore. I could say a lot about tools, but I'm not going to do that right now. So I've got, how does it fit together twice inadvertently, but it's kind of like, how does it fit together for your brand? And then how does that fit together for changes to your brand, really? And then, you know, if you're making a statement about your brand, can you make it shorter? Can you make it more concise? How can you make it really meaningful? Let's see. And then, so that's knowing your brand. And then on the other side of that, you really want to know your competition. Now, some people will say, I'm a disruptor, I have no competition. And believe me, I have heard that from so many people who want to hire me. And sometimes I don't end up working for them because I don't believe them. But that's okay. You know, so I think that there's something to be said for disruption, but you want to make sure you've done your due diligence and research. We have so much at our fingertips in terms of research. And what I find is often, you know, some of my smartest students just haven't done the basic Google searching, that while I'm on office hours with them, I'm just Googling away at the business they're telling me about is brand new and novel and it's disrupting. And they don't seem to have awareness. So I'll point out to them like, hey, what about XYZ company? They seem to be doing what you're doing. How do they figure in? Are they newer? Are they older? Et cetera, et cetera. And they didn't know that that company existed. So Google or whatever search engine of choice is your friend. Make sure you use it in incognito mode, because it's going to have the least amount of cached information. And you guys are probably very tech savvy about this, but if you're not, it's the information that your browser is keeping about you. And I would probably avoid doing it on mobile. I would do it, if you really want to do a good job of search, incognito mode on desktop using a VPN. That's the way that I would do it, to do really good competitive or any kind of research, really. Just because our phone providers, our mobile providers often have so much data about us, and there's just not a lot of legislation around that or really knowledge around that. So anyway, that's the best way, in my opinion, to do a search. Desktop incognito mode, your browser of choice, your search engine of choice, and then definitely, and I wouldn't ignore Google, but you know, I understand if you want to use go.go. And then just make sure that you're keeping note of that. So you're searching like for like. So if you compare that in 3 months time, so if you're benchmarking at a particular moment in time, note the date and time, and so you can go back to it either in your physical or your digital notes. So you've got direct competitors, and those are the brands that offer the same products and services as you. They don't have to be exactly the same, but pretty much the same thing, the same kind of function. So, you know, a toilet seat cover is a toilet seat cover, right? And you would think that business to business toilet seat covers would not change much from business to business, but believe it or not, I worked with people that, because spaces can be different, especially in places like San Francisco, you know, where you've got a lot of tourist traffic, you might have misunderstandings because you have lots of people coming from different countries, et cetera, and space is an issue. Certain kinds of toilet seat covers can't even be considered because the container that holds that dispenses the actual toilet seat covers is too big. So they may not be a direct competitor to you. You've got to be thinking about like the detail of it all, right? So really do the research, understand the product, the packaging, where it can fit. I mean, anybody that's worked in the beauty industry will understand this really well. Sephora has so much space. If you make a package that's this big for something, you know, often companies do, they make these huge things, but they have tons of investment. You'll find that the smaller beauty brands are making sample size things that they can put in the checkout aisle as tests, or they're throwing those in travel. There's a reason that you see travel kits for sale during the holiday season, right? Because they're cheaper to package and they're not as expensive to ship. So the way that companies can make up for the discount is to do that. Now, as a consumer, you can make that up by buying more volume and getting the percent discount on each item. And you have travel size things. So if you like to travel, you've got that. But anyway, you want to think about direct competitors, make sure they're direct, really pay attention to the detail. Like I was saying, toilet seat cover to toilet seat cover, they're not created equal. Comparative companies, they might have a similar look and feel as your brand, but they are brands that target the same customer base. So comparative companies might be thought of in the same breath as your company by consumers. They might also be companies that you have an eye out on that could be your competition in the future, and have a very different business model than you. This is very true of services. So I mentioned I work in healthcare. You think about how IVF is delivered these days, how fertility is delivered across all segments of society and lots of different people that present with different situations. You can imagine that the doctor-patient relationship can change based on the business model. So we see kind body clinics coming into the space, and the kind body model is you see a different doctor for your consult, you see a different doctor for different procedures. Well, a lot of times that doctor-patient relationship, if you've gone through something like that, it's a trauma. So you really bond with your doctor and you kind of want their guidance throughout. But is that the most efficient way to do it for the company, for a company that's looking to be efficient? Kindbody doesn't think so. They think that if they just have doctors do consults and that's all they do all day, they can really measure their efficiency and make sure that they're doing that to the best of their ability, then pass the person on to the next doctor, the next doctor, the next doctor, the next doctor. Personally, I have questions about that model. I think you can tell, but it's a very specific kind of business model. Be specific. Look at those comparative companies. If you work for a traditional IVF clinic, they might not think about that as potential competition, but it absolutely is, especially if they can find efficiencies and make larger margins on the same procedure. So think about those comparative companies. I know that the IVF example is a less fun example, but it may ring true for some of you. So I like to use a variety of examples. Then there's indirect competitors. So brands that may offer different products, but compete for the same space or budget as you. So I'll use the beauty example again. So hair product is going to compete for the same space as people who are creating makeup for the face, right? This is part of why you see more beauty brands that get funding or that have big backers. Like Fenty Beauty did an early test. They had particular products. They did particular things. They have a clear idea of who their audience is. It's a very cool and progressive concept, but they've quickly launched into a whole range of products because they can take more space on a virtual shelf, shopping online or in person. So either way, or a hybrid of the two, they've got more covered. And then of course, for shipping and everything, the more volume they do, the less margin they have because they're shipping more products. They can throw more samples into their sample holiday kits and get people hooked on, maybe some of their bread and butter products that people didn't know that they even had, but they were trying something trendy they saw on TikTok or found an article on Birdie that recommended something like that. And then I put in a caveat on inspiration. So this is what I was talking about earlier, where people feel inspired by a certain type of individual. And I used Elon Musk as an example. He may be a little bit of an acquired taste for some people. I think his social presence it's probably not for me, just because, I don't always like to see people, I don't like to feel like people are being contrarian for the sake of it necessarily, right? But I might take a short snippet of it. Like I might watch a snippet of him on YouTube Shorts. You have to kind of understand and how you can kind of engage almost anyone if you pick the right forum in your digital channels. So thinking about the channels and how you deliver the content, I use this in the Insta Live that I did earlier today, where I inadvertently just brought up Megyn Kelly. So I think Megyn Kelly, regardless of partisanship, can be an incredible interviewer. However, she tends to grate on my nerves simply because she will sometimes let this very white male disc jockey, back in the day, shock jock, whatever you want to call them, but like this this, whining male idea of what radio and video and that sort of commentary space is supposed to be taken up by. And she plays to it. So I'm like, instead of just embracing who you are, you're kind of playing to the guys, right? Like you're acting like a guy to, you know what I mean? So it just kind of annoys me for that reason, because I feel like it makes people, anyway, the bottom line is, because I think she has good interview skills and I trained as a journalist, I will watch YouTube shorts of her, even though I might never subscribe to her channel. I may never watch long form content, which may be her bread and butter. She's going to get me at shorts. And if she gets enough views from my shorts, I am helping her monetize, just myself, right? And I might be sharing that content, so then I'm helping grow her audience. So it just moves on and on. So there's ways that you might find inspiration from some of these examples. You want to be looking and following folks that are inspiring to you. And that is where the next piece comes in, which is a lot of people will tell me, I don't know how to gather the information, which kind of floors me sometimes, but that's okay. Like, we're all a little bit different. I am a curious person by nature. I'm also a skeptical person by nature. So I will sometimes sign up for things knowing that I'm really in it for the promo code. I recently have signed up for a ton of organizations' mailing lists just because I know Black Friday, Cyber Monday is coming. So I'm sitting cynically, delete on all the emails they're sending me now, waiting for the best promo code that's coming, and I use all the predictor engines or whatever out there that tell me when the best price is going to be and that sort of thing. You may not be that person. You may be, I don't want the emails. I always suggest that if you are that type of person and you have one email that is your primary email and you really want to kind of keep that cleaned up, or you've worked really hard to keep it sort of clean and free of junk, create a free Gmail account or choose a platform of your choice, create an account purely for your marketing purposes, where you can sign up for things and look at them, search for them. That's why I like Gmail, because I do think the search function there is great to be able to search and find these different offers, phrasing of offers, different organizations that might have collaborations with nonprofits or other causes at particular times. Remember, Giving Tuesday is coming. That's important for a lot of profit-driven and nonprofit organizations. That's the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, so it's after Cyber Monday, when people, nonprofits, especially that are trying to meet end of year goals, are really trying to raise money. If they haven't been planning for this since June, they're already behind, right? So if you're in that space, you want to take a breath and know you can catch up, but know also that your competition has been planning for a long time, and they'll have been using emails throughout the year to kind of test, what are people opening? What times of day are they opening? Some of the things I alluded to earlier. So try out their email list, get on their email list, check out their offers, see if they're, if it's a direct to consumer product, check out, are they on Retail Me Not? Do they have some relationship with Honey? The browser extensions out there for folks like me who want to do and check all that predictive analytics stuff that's out there to help you buy at exactly the best time for the best price. You want to not just stop there. If you can, buy products, read reviews, explore websites, and sign up for their newsletter and text alerts, and play with that if you can. You want to follow the brand on all their social channels, really seek them out, and also notice, this is a huge thing actually, and it's a big pet peeve of mine, is what do they have in their header and footer as their social, or somewhere on their site as their social? And then where are they actually on social? So many are missing out on getting people on TikTok, which is silly because of the advantages of having not even a huge amount, but a minimum threshold on TikTok, so you can go live and take advantage of that benefit. And there's lots of examples across social that you guys will know. You want to note where and when you see your competitors' ads and take screenshots of them. And I often will ask my friends to do the same thing. Remember, you still want to try to be screenshotting and capturing on desktop, incognito mode, in the browser of your choice, right? Because so that the least information is known about you. But really, any information is good. And now with, especially on, iPhones and really any smartphone these days, look at the metadata on when the photo was taken and, what the resolution, all of the, where that resolution data is. But it'll tell you the operating system and things like that. See if that's in there, because you may need that later for troubleshooting or other things. You want to take notes on not just ads, but really any offers. Like, do they have something on their website, like at the very top? Could that be something that you implement? Do they have pop-ups? Are those irritating or friendly? Do they have chat bots? And can you get to a real person? I mean, those are all things to think about, because those are potentially investments of at least time and energy on your part if you implement them. You want to be looking at search terms. So doing searches on different social, on different, not just, so you want to be looking on search. And depending on your age, some people do or don't know to go and search on search engines directly. And they also may or may not know that those search results are often, Meta plays with this all the time, but they're often powered by the Bing and Yahoo network. So doing advertising with Bing, Yahoo, yes, people still use those. Yes, they still use their internet provider homepage, which is where we see a lot of the Bing, Yahoo, but those can be higher income earners. So don't leave any audiences out potentially, but you can do paid ads, not very expensive. And sometimes that will influence or be the results that you get on, say, a Facebook search. Usually it's more Facebook than it is Instagram, but I'm sure we will see a matchup because Zuckerberg is such a fan of Microsoft products still. And then ask customers what they think. We talked about this, do surveys, ask them, what do they think your rivals are doing well? Who do they even identify as your rivals? If you wanted to use that word. And then what they love about brands, not just in your arena, but like adjacent arenas, or if you're thinking of moving into other arenas, you want to be thinking about that as well. So let's get ready to measure, right? Like, measurement is everything. So this is an important, more important than marketing plan versus tactic, strategy versus planning, all of these different phrases that we use in marketing. One of the most important phrases is really KPI, key performance indicator. Any CFO worth their salt will expect you to have performance indicators. So you may not be ever in that much of or may not want to be in that much of a corporate position, but there's lots of different things you can measure. We call those metrics, we call that analytics. These tend to also be, if you're interested in making marketing your career, areas where you can make the most money. So you really, I think, especially to the way that Google is moving with Google Data Studio, which some of you that are doing programming will be aware of, the way that we're moving to GA4, or most people should have moved to GA4 unless their platform is limiting it. And I'm sorry, Denny, a friend of mine, if he's on here, and I'm not calling you out, but I am kind of calling out the company you work for, because he's a partner of mine and he can't implement that for me. So, again, that you want to have as much and the newest metrics as possible, and you want to be able to compare them. In the olden days, we used to call that triangulating data, and older companies, legacy companies like Microsoft, are still going to expect someone like me at a strategy level, a C-level person, to come in and be taking data from at least 3 sources and comparing them to each other. So you can imagine what those sources might be, but it really depends on the kind of business it is. But you still want to have, no matter what size you are, a key performance indicator, even an Uber driver. And I'm not saying Uber driver like they're the lowest thing ever, because I think Uber drivers can have a great life and make way more money than people realize, especially in San Diego. But I would have like a targeted number, really approach it like a business. Like, how many rides do I want to do a day? About how long are they? Or, how much, a tip am I expecting from each of those, et cetera, so that you're kind of accepting and doing the right amount of work for what your anticipated income is, no matter what you're deciding to make your income, right? This is the focus of your time and energy and effort. So you want to be able to benchmark what success looks like. That means you need to have key performance indicators, and those depend on you. You have to imagine, what does success look like, and think big and small, long-term, short-term. We tend to think in quarters, because fiscal quarters, so that's every 3 months. It's also a helpful metric. I think quarters are a helpful metric for getting your head around really how business works as well, in terms of, we do quarterly reporting. We typically, when I'm reporting to my clients, we're looking at quarterly reports and we're comparing quarter over quarter and then year over year. So I tend to do things that way. Doesn't mean you need to do them that way, but I would suggest that as a starting point. And also realize that there will be time for some efforts to take shape and others not to. So depending on how sophisticated your SEO program is, and I would invest time in thinking about how you want to approach your SEO program beyond just content generation and the consistency of your content generation. You also want to be thinking about, does that include placement on podcasts? And why is that important? Well, because if you do placement on a podcast and as part of doing that, you get an agreement in writing over email to say that you're going to be able to provide them with a link that they put in the show notes. That link in the show notes goes to thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of different platforms that then distribute to other platforms. So basically that deep link is going to thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of places. So you can get a lot done by really thinking through at a high level each piece of those foundations that I presented at the beginning, regardless of whether it's a plan or a tactic or long-term or short-term. But you really want to start with, what does success look like? What is my performance? What are my performance indicators? It's absolutely crucial to knowing whether you're succeeding or frankly failing. So here's what some success metrics could look like. So let's say you post a new blog. And most people that are, in a business want to be thinking about consistently, not just posting, but consistently posting to their website in blog format. And you want to include some video content on that page. So things you might look at to measure success would be establishing how many views you want to get, how many this should be people watch the video. So watching the video, and then you'll get a percentage usually on most platforms of how much of the video that they watch on average. I think the average person right now watches 17% of a video. So that's actually good. So anything over 10% is actually pretty good with the video, but it depends on how long it is too. Engagement with the video, so your likes, your comments, your shares. Keep in mind too, with engagement, emojis are tricky. Sometimes algorithms count those, depends on the platform, and it depends on the algorithm at any particular time on a platform. Sometimes if you do emoji only responses, let's say it's for a friend or whatever, it does not count as engagement. So if you want someone for that to count as engagement, just say, love you, or something just offhand, love it, whatever it might be, and then your emojis. You can still go crazy with emojis, but just know that might not count as engagement. There's still debate about that out in the algorithm sphere. Clicks to your blog, so the number of views, and then how they engage on the page could be tracked depending on how you have your analytics set up. I put CTA here because you always want to have a call to action. So CTA, like KPI, K performance indicator, CTA, call to action. We used to call to action Bob's, because I don't know if you think about it, back in the early days of the internet, and this has kind of continued on, there are still a lot of orange buttons that are the register now, go live, sign up here, whatever, those click, places people want you to click are often still orange. And that has to do with cognitive behavioral information that we have in data sciences around color. So that is a whole other area if you were interested in exploring career-wise, that I think is really interesting. It's extremely scientific. So those of you that are scientists out there, it's a great area that might complement the skills that you already have. You also want to look at potentially leads from the post. So did that blog end up bringing you a certain number of people that turned into consultations of some kind? If you have like a consulting service, let's say, or it could be anything, leads that, end up purchasing a product, people that have, want something custom done, it can be lots of different things. But again, you want to think about, what is that metric? You decide this. This is your destiny, right? increase in leads from the post versus posts without videos would be key to measure, right? You can compare like with like and assess some outcomes. That's hugely useful. So I would definitely be thinking about differences in the delivery of the content. As I said before, at the very top, content is sort of the king of it all in the way that I sort of think of it, because that the idea for the content, it can be delivered in so many different ways, and we want to be as accessible to people as possible. So those are ways you want to think about measuring, and set those out early on, as early as possible. If you've already started with a product launch, get going with those now. Before you start any marketing effort, this is ideal world, so it doesn't always pertain, or you'll be brought in to consult and the basics haven't been done, but you'll want to familiarize yourself with important metrics associated with your goals. So the kinds of things that I just noted earlier are really good examples. They're kind of the basics, the things that are in your dashboard of Google Analytics. Those are kind of the basics. And then if you start thinking about your customer behavior, who's coming in from social media might be really key. And then within social media, how many from Insta versus TikTok? I mean, it starts to become kind of intuitive, and you're able to drill down into that detail. So that's on a website. Now, if you're looking at it, if you're on a social site doing commerce, you're going to be beholden to what they're willing to tell you. And with California's "Do Not Sell My Info" law, social media companies, Meta in particular, have really taken it upon themselves to restrict what we can learn. So even though I'm not a big believer in running ads, I think I say in one of the slides before I end this, you might consider running an ad, just because they will give you more information to tell you about your audience. And key is this geographic and demographic information. Sometimes you need to restrict the audience that sees your content because you're getting too much. So I had a brand that I started working with in December, and I realized in like March that a company with a very similar name is operating in India, does the same thing, but there could be market confusion. So really making sure that I'm looking at search, I'm looking at how I'm spending any ad dollars, and being very aware of the fact that they're like content creators that just are epic in comparison to what I can do with the people that I have that are experts in the access that I have to them. So, you have to balance those things in mind. So sometimes, you've got to be looking for those deeper analytics that help you get context around people, but also help you get context around your market share and how you might be spending money or time or energy on people that are not part of your base. So that geographic, where people are, and that demographic, who they are, how much money do they make per year kind of thing. If you're in California and you may have services priced at a prohibitive level for most of the rest of the country. So that's something to consider as well. And you want to track performance metrics as you start. You want to benchmark the number as your content performs. Particularly if you bring in help, you really want to have, this is where we were, and screenshots of all of those numbers. There's also great things you can do to automate your, whatever, if you're using Google Sheets or whatever else, you can do a lot with, Excel sheets in whatever form online to just populate with numbers all of the time. So you can kind of see those trends and then use them properly. And if you don't know how to do that yourself, the great thing is Fiverr and the many other services that are available can help you with that. Even Friends, I'm sure, can help you with getting that set up. So with that, I will wrap this section of our event this evening. I'm Jennifer Neely, and you can find me on most socials at Jennifer Neely. On TikTok, I'm Gigi Neely, which is what my mom calls me. And my email address is here, my work phone's here, and then my website. So you're welcome to go and